We're happy to announce that we have just launched the Curious Builder Collective. It is a community of builders looking to enhance their brands and businesses by tapping into the collective expertise of the talented builders in the Minneapolis area. It's a forum for asking questions, exploring ideas, and testing theories, all to help refine and apply these insights to your own business. Our group is a supportive community that rallies behind each other. If you're interested, please head to thecuriousbuilderpodcast.com. Under events, you'll find the Curious Builder Collective. We hope to see you there. This episode is brought to you by Pella Northland. For 19 and a half years, I've been building homes, and 95% of all of my homes have used Pella windows. I couldn't be happier to call them a partner in our builds and our remodels. Whether you're an architect, a designer, or a remodeler, I'd highly recommend Pella windows. They can fit old homes, new homes, reclaimed, commercial, and really everything in between. Pella is a company that we trust and that we recommend to our clients. Additionally, in management, Peter and Ed have just been absolute fantastic people to work with, as well as mentors to me personally. So when it comes time to look for a window, I'd highly recommend Pella Windows. Find more at pellanorthland.com. Also, if you're interested, you can hear episode 1 where I interview Peter and Ed together for a great listen on business and Pella Windows. Today on the podcast, we had Aaron Eggert on from Coalition 9, and it was an awesome podcast, as I thought it would be, just because Aaron is a great, colorful personality, lots to share, extremely energetic, and I think you're going to really find out what it's like to connect with people. I think the thing that comes across the most clearly about Aaron is just his passion and his drive to connect other people and to create something beyond a transaction. This is not a networking group. These are peer groups, relationship buildings. It's about how do you make sure that the character is represented in the people that are coming. And so I think you're going to find this to be a great listen, and I hope you enjoy. And now to the Curious Builder podcast. Welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today I'm joined with Aaron Eggert from Coalition 9. Thanks for coming on, Aaron.
Hey, man. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Man, this is awesome. So It's been a long time coming. We met probably about a year ago, 8-10 months ago.
Yeah, I think it was actually a little more than a year, though.
Was it?
Yeah.
Because Nancy Flom is a C9er, as we call them, a Coalition 9, your networking group, which we're about to talk about. And I don't know if I told you the whole story. So I went down there. They were trying to get our business for carpet and flooring. And I must have been pretty wound up that day as opposed to normal. For those that
Right.
know me, they're like rolling their eyes.
And
she's like, you know who you remind me of? You're so much like him, except you have more hair than him, is Aaron Eggert.
That's pretty fair. I'll take that, actually.
And I was like, oh man, this poor guy must be really wound. And so anyway, I guess I got a brother from another mother.
We do.
So that was the intro. So tell us a little bit about your business for those that aren't familiar with you. And obviously there's a lot of builders that probably wouldn't be familiar with you, but give us a little bit of your backstory about what Coalition 9 is, and then we'll kind of dive into some of your history.
Yeah, so I started this just over 5 years ago, and a lot of it was driven around being a previous business owner and the experiences of the loneliness that I had, and I was in peer groups, but I could never find my people, and I have a thing with the Good Old Boys Club, I guess, and a lot of that is the Good Old Boys Club that I just never identify that, as that. So I kind of wanted to be a disruptor to the Good Old Boy Club.
Counterculture.
Right. Yeah. And so community first was something that I wanted to build. I also wanted to make sure and build something that was more diverse, obviously. So I set out on that journey and hired a brand strategist to help me, figure out what that looks and feels like, and invest in technology heavily. And so one of the things I wanted to do is make sure that we had an unrivaled member experience, but yet the least amount of overhead as possible. So I never wanted membership dues to be the barrier to entry. I wanted character to be the barrier to entry. So good people need to know good people is something I say. So I think the model of peer group is powerful, right? You're in a group, you understand the concept of it. No one really speaks the same language other than humanity and business. And so we sit really nice at where business and life meet. And so we want to create a space that's very safe, driven by vulnerability, transparency, authenticity. Our groups meet for a half a day a month. So the time commitment is modest. But for someone like yourself or like myself, it's a time commitment. the financial aspect isn't the barrier to entry sometimes for people. It is the time. And so you're busy running your business, you're having a family, all those other things. So you got to have margin in your life for it. But we've been confident in the fact that once people do make the commitment to be a part of it, to attend, that they have that positive impact. And then I always wanted the community aspect. You can't just do that with a group of 9 people in a facilitator meeting once a month. I also wanted to make events a big part of that. So we put on 20 events per year for the community to be able to come together and build relationships and hopefully do business together and meet each other where they're at and provide impact for each other.
I mean, you've got a very succinct story in all of that. We want to spend a lot of time talking about the power of networking, and some of my questions are really going to be about that. Obviously, the majority of our listeners are in the building trades and communities, and there's a number of, either local associations or, things like the Builder 20 groups or some other initiatives that even we're going to be a part of that we'll talk about. Before we get to that, what led to this desire to bring all these people together? I was looking at your, I'll call it your past lives. I mean, as far as I can tell, you had about 5 different, you worked at S&T office for a couple of years.
Yeah.
You've got iSpace, the Back 40. You're currently on 2 boards. You have the Power of 9 podcast currently, as well as this Coalition 9. I mean, you've got a long repertoire here. Maybe just give us a quick overview of what shaped you into the person that you were, and then we'll talk about when you started Coalition 9 here 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, so
because I don't think someone just on day one,
Yeah.
in their 20s are like, I'm going to start this incredible
Not at all.
networking
It's
group. I
been
feel
a-
like you need a backstory to sort of get to
Yeah.
realize what the value is.
It's been a journey, right? So I grew up in a middle class family, right? Forest Lake area. Went to college for a handful of months, dropped out. It wasn't my jam.
Like most successful entrepreneurs.
Well, I've heard that. I think others have made their way. I just chose not to do it, right? And so I worked in the printing industry for a little bit. My dad was in the printing industry, so there's some correlations there. It wasn't my jam. So I got into sales. Got to channel this energy the right way. I had a really great mentor. He was an ex-3M guy. He worked at 3M for 35 years doing everything under the sun for sales. So he kind of helped me work my energy into a positive way to be able to do business development, be a hunter, those types of things. I did really well in sales. Got elevated into management. So I was with S&T for probably, I don't know, almost like 8 years, actually, in the grand scheme of things. A lot of different roles, though. Eventually became a vice president. I'll never forget, the general manager that ran that company, he was an ex-McGladrey guy, so big CPA firm, strategy firm. He sat me down and was like, all right, we got to do your onboarding for being the VP here. The thing we should start with is the P&L. Well, I'm 29 years old, no formal education, school of hard knocks, been in sales and management, never had have exposure to that, never really got my dirty little mitts into the finance side of things. I didn't even know what the hell P&L meant. I was just, all right, so
You're a classic sales guy.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
And so he's like, oh God, here we go. We got to get my hands dirty with this guy. So all that being said, I had a really good mentorship base there. The company, I felt like I outgrew it a little bit. They were going one direction, I was going another. So I met up with a guy. He became my business partner, Joel Peterson. I became a partner at that company, iSpace. Again, commercial interiors. So I kind of thought I was going to hitch my wagon on that industry for the rest of my life. So it was a small company at the time. We came together and put our heads together. We grew that company exponentially, 270% in 5 years. We were hitting some significant revenue numbers, and everything was great. Then it was my problem, and I turned 40. I felt like I had a little bit of a midlife crisis. What was I going to do for the rest of my life, right? So my wife and I don't have kids. I kind of was having a little bit of a legacy conflict in my head. What am I going to do to kind of solidify my legacy moving forward? Am I going to spend the rest of my career in commercial interiors? How is that going to have a positive impact on my legacy? And so I had to have a hard conversation with my partner and say, I just don't think this is for me anymore. I feel like this business, one, is outgrowing me. I'm a little bit of a grinder. I like being scrappy. I like being a gunslinger. I'm high risk tolerance. you get a business that size, you got to have a little bit more stability. Systems and process is the next thing that you really need to invest in. That's not me. So made a conscious decision, did a 1-year transition. I transitioned out of there. You said Back 40. Back 40 was something that I created, was a consulting company. I'm not a good consultant.
The name is very curious to me. Where did the name Back 40 come from? Because I'm
Uh,
thinking of like the back nine in golf. Like, what's Back 40? Is
Yeah,
that like
so
the back 40 of your life? Like you turn 40
perfect.
in the
Yep.
back side of your life?
So kind of in farm culture, Back 40 is like uncultivated, undeveloped land. And so
And that's just a common term that
that's a
farmers would all
common
know.
term that is used in farm country. We live on a hobby farm in Lester Prairie, Minnesota. So there's some great correlations to that and kind of homage to the community that I live in. And then the Back 40 of my life. And
We're both on the back 40 of our life.
we
I
are,
like that.
and probably many of your listeners are too. So it's a good spot to be. It's just, for me, I felt like my midlife crisis, and I say that with air quotes, that it came a little early. So I felt like that Back 40 was really something that I was going to spend time into. I love the name. I'm not going to lie. Like, I loved that name.
It's catchy.
It's very catchy. I felt like I was going in the right direction. And then I had the Coalition 9 idea, and that the whole branding process of that, and how we really wanted to make sure that and create that exclusivity yet accessibility. And as I was going
That's
through,
a fine balance, by the way.
it's hard,
right? Because it's like, to your point, you wanted the counterculture of the good old boys club. So you didn't want to create a new good old boys club.
Yep.
You wanted to be inclusive, but you wanted to be special and feel like this is something significant, something special,
Yep.
but yet accessible. That's walk me with how important was that? You mentioned you hired a brand strategist.
Mm-hmm.
Two questions here. One is, having just gone through a brand strategy the last couple of years and kind of realizing like, wow, I never spent that much time thinking about it.
Yep.
Turns out it was on the back 41 is when I decided I needed a brand strategy. So there's something there.
Yeah, there is.
Walk us through how you valued a brand, what brought that to your awareness, and then we'll go into how that sort of unfolded into the creation of, the Coalition 9.
I think in that exploration process, that internal exploration process I was going through, a lot of things I wanted the brand to emulate my style. So I'm unapologetically authentic. I have a huge problem with authority. I want a passionate, energetic community. And so you take all of those things and mix them up. That was really what informed Kate, who was my brand strategist, to help us through that process. And so we were creating personas of like, what's the ideal member profile, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, like, to me, the easiest way to explain brand is, how does it make someone feel? And so whether that be the second that they hit your website, the social media digital strategy that they see on their social channels or whatever, the meeting me and being the leader of this community, I want it all to be synergistic and symbiotic. But yet I want it to feel like, wow, this is something special. Like, I'm proud to be a part of this community, but not everybody can be a part of it. And it's never because of money.
My two things, when you were talking about the word feel, two things come to mind. One is housing related. For years, you just try to do good work with good people. And as you elevate, in my particular industry as a custom home builder, you would just want to do good work.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do, architecturally nothing super crazy, but still build a really solid home. And then hopefully as you get later in your career, if you're really interested in architecture, you can do a good home and a good architecture. They can blend. But at the end of the day, the thing that's the most important to me is a lot of times clients are unaware of some of the higher end things that you're doing because they're just not in the industry. So they just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. But my favorite compliment is when they would come through the home is they'd look around and they'd be there for, half hour or whatever at a home tour. They leave away and then they would say, I can't tell you how your house is different, but I love how your home feels. Mm. And it took me a long time to realize how important that was. And I quickly realized that it was a huge compliment because a home, there's all these bumper stickers or, in cafes across probably, the Midwest and the Western states, right? Is, home is where the heart is and all these types of things, but it really relates to how somebody feels. And you're creating that, in a group setting instead of an actual physical house. You're creating a a structure of people that they feel safe, and the feeling is something connectivity. Is
Yeah.
that accurate?
Yeah, I would say connectivity is central to what we are, but I think vulnerability has never been celebrated in the past, and I think previous generations, that's something that you just kind of hold a little closer to the vest. And the thing I wanted to create was a place where, I mean, there's things that you have in your business, any business owner has, that they just don't want to bring home. And there's the business baggage and stuff like that. And then there's things that are going on at home that affect the business, but you don't want to bring that and just kind of air your laundry at the office or in the workplace. And so you kind of have to have a tribe of people that are you can just get real with. And so as part of our process and how we train our facilitators and the types of facilitators that we bring, I mean, your facilitator Summer's a perfect
She's
example of that.
amazing.
She's amazing, right? Like that is going to be an extension of the brand. And I'm hypersensitive, borderline unhealthy obsessed with what that looks and feels like and the right people that we have associated to this. And then there was a point where we flipped a switch maybe a year before you joined, where we became referral only. And so that is allowing us to make sure that we've always got that captive audience of people that really want to be there, and friends are introducing their friends. It eliminates our ability to have to go out and do outbound, all of the stuff. The brand has started to just kind of build. I think we're on the precipice of where we want to go, but for me, it's organic. I don't want it to be something that we're just flipping switches all the time. I want to make sure that we're growing organically, that is going to feel good for the members, that they still always feel like there's something special.
You're chasing experience, not money. And
Totally.
and so what's happening is, your key thing that you said earlier on is that character is the barrier to entry, not money.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that there is some obviously money involved, because this isn't for free,
Right.
and you have to make a living. But I also like the idea that you're right. When I choose to pay mine quarterly.
Mm-hmm.
You pay monthly, yearly, however you like. But I like it that to me, I look at it every time I see the bill. I'm like, this is a great value.
Yeah.
And I remember just recently somebody said that if someone is questioning your pricing, your story is too short.
Right.
And I like that too. And I like that as you get in, it was very quick. Nancy being the one that recommended me, you sat down with
Mm-hmm.
me, we chatted. Walk us a little bit through the process. So you have these character referrals. So in some ways, it's already going through the lens of
Mm-hmm.
a passionate C9er, as
Mm-hmm.
they're referred to. Walk us through how that works. So let's say I meet someone, I'm like, hey, they'd be great. Maybe not in our group, but just they need to be part of this because I've gotten a lot of value out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You sit down with them, and kind of, what is that evaluation process like? Is it mostly instinct, or is there actually, like, you've done this now for a while? How do you vet these people, and do you vet every single member?
I think if I'm being like, we're at a point now where I think 80% of the work is done when you've made that introduction. Okay. So that makes my job really easy. Then it just comes down to making sure that we're protecting the community as a whole, but we're providing an outstanding experience for that individual and the group that individual gets placed into. So then that comes to a little bit of the heavy lifting on my part to just kind of understand, at the end of the day, the thing that matters the most, more than the size of their business, what business they're in, their fancy title, or anything like that. It's all about personality and chemistry. And so getting a feeling for some of that, I being an old sales guy, I love watching body language. I love inflection of voice, the choice of words, all of those things. I'm just a very active listener. I'm not very good at asking closed-ended questions. So things that continually keep the conversation going, then I can get a feel of like the type of energy that they're going to be around, the type of drive that this individual has. And that helps shape the perspective of where I think that best fit would be for that person. I generally take so that's typically, I can do that at about, frankly, I got a really good gut on it about a half an hour. I usually like to spend about an hour. Like you and I spent an hour together, and half of it was just bullshit. So like, I just enjoyed the time together. So that's normally how it goes. Then I digest it for about 48 hours. And then I'll look at our groups, see if we have any group openings that are the right fit. Maybe we have a group that's opening in the future that would be a good fit. And sometimes I just say, based on what you got going on and the fit that I think that you need, I just don't have anything for you. And so you might have to wait a few months until we get another
I
group
think that was
going.
me. I think I waited a few months. I
You
can't
did.
remember. I
Yeah.
think there was mine was a new group for
It
one
was a new
thing.
group. Yep.
It was interesting because one of the things I was going to ask you is I think we had two members. Mark Ostrom was in a former group and he's in our group now.
Yep.
I'm actually really impressed. You think sometimes like if you're in the right group, and I don't know the reasons actually, I should have asked him, but like whether it's culture or fit, sometimes it's personality. It's just, like your vibe attracts your tribe, as they say. And so like we've actually, did you catch out what our new name is? We're called the Squirrel Squad.
Oh, I did see that. That's great.
I mean, it's totally us.
It totally is.
We are so squirrely. Poor Summer is the calmest one by far.
Yeah.
And I'm a big personality. And there's a few others. Well, Mark as well. Yeah. And we have, and so we interviewed this new Mark, the accountant. And he's amazing.
He is.
And he goes, I'm pretty, because now there's 3 Marks in the group.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, it was yesterday's meeting was the first one. And he said, I'm hoping to join in a couple months. And I just want to interview you guys and kind of see how it's going. He goes, I'm kind of introverted. I looked over at Mark Ostrom. I'm like, you'll fit right in with the other Marks. And, but you could tell he was just cracking. I mean, I guarantee it was a different than whatever group he had interviewed before. And so I think he's going to be a great fit. I kind of got the sense that he'd be interested. So I will see. But where I was going with this is I like the idea that just because it wasn't a fit, Mark didn't bail Ostrom. Like he went to a new group. And so I think that speaks really to the power of your presence and kind of guiding hand in this, because sometimes you could see people joining a group and like, this isn't my people, I'm out completely.
Yep.
The idea that they could be redirected speaks to like the larger faith in what they're doing and what you're doing. I think that actually speaks in some ways even more volume than hitting it out of the park on the first round.
And we normally hit it out of the park in the first round.
I would imagine.
And we do. I will say, like, if somebody comes back to me after a couple sessions and they give me some feedback of like, here's why I'm thinking I need a different group, I typically will challenge them back and say, have you thought about this, or did you give this a choice? And a lot of it is really around, are they really getting vulnerable, and are they really showing who they are? And in a lot of cases, they haven't shed that armor yet. Yeah. And that doesn't happen fast for everybody. I'm a quick to trust type person. I have a feeling you're probably the same way.
Very much
but
so.
if somebody breaks that trust, good luck getting it back.
Yep.
Some other people are just really slow to trust. And so what I find is a lot of cases, just from a psychology standpoint, some of the people that may come back to me and be like, I'm kind of still wondering if this is the right fit for me, I'll challenge them back a little bit. And then many of those people, after a few sessions, they're like, all right, you're right. I get it.
I think you accurately summarized it, obviously, very well. I've noticed it, and we'll maybe later we'll switch a little bit because you have a podcast. I want to talk about that a little bit, but just to make it relatable, I've noticed now, I've been doing podcasts for about a year and a half. I've noticed that the podcasts that are the most interesting to listen to are, and also the ones the most interesting for me to have, both within my people that I interview, but also the ones that I listen to, are the ones that are the most authentic. The most vulnerable, because you learn something. Sometimes when you have someone that's quote media trained, you don't get anything out of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not, maybe there's nothing wrong with it. I guess someone was saying that, I guess I won't say her name. She's a very famous celebrity. They're media trained, and it was great.
You can feel that.
Yeah, you can feel it. And it just wasn't the same. And I found that in business, at least for what I'm trying to do, even with this podcast, the Curious Builders, like I just want to take down the walls and just realize like, business is really hard. Yeah. It's hard. It can be really fun. It can be really enjoyable. And you want to surround yourself with really great people and do really neat things. And this vibe attracting your tribe is the whole point, because life is too short. We're on the back 40. Let's enjoy the people that we're with, both from our clients within our own teams, and then the other people we collaborate with. And I think that, what you're doing, which I really appreciate about what you're doing, is that they're across industries. And so I guess one of my questions is how many of these people have been in networking groups previously, and how many of them are in more than one networking group, to your knowledge?
First, I'll say I have a thing with the word networking.
Okay. What's a better word?
So for me, relationship building,
okay,
right? Or I just like peer group. Like I think networking groups get a little bit of a stigma because it feels transactional. So people are going to think of the requirements that you have to be a part of this group. Like you got to bring X amount of leads, or you got to do something like that. Networking, I think in its sense, like if you were just looking at it from a technology standpoint, it's a point-to-point connection, and it seems super transactional. So I've wanted to do everything I can. And I get that networking has a place. I just feel like where we lie, it's deeper than that. So we're going for depth, not width. where networking is like, I did 10 networking meetings this week. It's like, oh, was that good? Tony, you see
That's
your
so funny.
time?
I've never been
Like,
able to articulate what you're talking about, but I feel exactly what you're
yeah.
telling me.
And I think a lot of people, like a ton of your listeners, I think probably do, because if they were to reflect back on their week and they had a really heavy networking week, how many of those actually turned into something that made you feel good about the time you spent there? So I think it's how you use the time in doing that. So I wanted to create a space where people are really able to build relationships, but then also you have a group of people, you have 8 other people in your group that conspire for you and with you. And I think there's power, like that is very tribal. That's very powerful. I think many of the people that business is hard and business is super lonely. And so even if you can get things out of listening to that's a big part of why people listen to podcasts like this, because the stories are relatable. And kind of going back to your point, like the people that are media trained, they're media trained. Like they are no ums, no you knows, all the stuff that I
You
say.
betchas. No, you
Right, right.
betchas.
They clearly don't swear as much as I do, which I'm pulling way back as best as I can for you, Mark. But I'm again, I want to make sure in this, it's an extension of my brand and it's an extension of Coalition 9's brand. Just like, and I'm not for everybody. We're not going to be for everybody. I get that. There's 11,529 registered businesses with 2 or more employees in the 7-county metro area. We just want a little bit of that. But we want the right ones. And that's where it all comes back to that referral partners.
That's amazing. I love that. What do you think? What is the average lifespan for a C9er? And what kind of background research did you do, or what informed you as you created this? Looking around, were you in other peer groups? Were you in? What did they not fulfill that caused you to start your own? Because I always find I'm asking this question because we'll talk about it in a minute about me starting one, but like there's either something that you're not being fulfilled that makes you do it, or B, you like the idea so much that you can't stop. You want to do it also on your own as well. So what made you do it?
I got a super easy answer for the lifespan thing. I don't know yet. We've been around for 5 years, and all the groups that we have attrition, right? But last year our attrition was single digits percentage.
And you have over 200.
We have 232 members.
That's incredible.
And so for us to keep people it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I want to make sure that we are obsessed with the member experience. Our theme this year, every theme that we've had the 4 years prior has been growth related, growth of the community, some kind of theme that kind of gets the team rallied. This year is unrivaled member experience. It has nothing to do with growth. It's all about making sure that we keep our members and we keep them happy. My experiences in other peer communities, peer groups was very, I think the thing I really wanted to make sure that we created that was different than anything else is predictability. You're busy, right? I'm busy. Half the time our members are coming in hot and they're, if your meeting's at 9 o'clock, I think yours is at 9 a.m. You didn't think about it much until about 8:45. Like probably when you're walking up, going
like the
to
rosebud thorn. And some of us are better at off the cuff, right? I imagine you are as right. And as I am. And for those that don't know, I mean, I've only been a C9er for about 9 months. And that's actually what I appreciate about it, because I have so much, I mean, I'm very organized in terms of like, I have to follow a building plan. Obviously, I built custom homes for my real job. But for, this other side of things, I like the free flowing state. I get the most creativity and energy out of not having something scripted for me.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. Those that really, isn't it funny how balances are? Like people that are really organized sort of need to be challenged to be more colorful and more open. And those that are really open and colorful, we sort of need organization around us to help. You need it to be together. Like I really appreciate Summer because she brings she's the facilitator for our group, as you know, but the audience doesn't. And having different personalities within the group is no different than a family. Just representing the different colors of the rainbow makes it more colorful and makes it more useful as a unit. And I lost my way on the original question of where we were going with this, but
so I think the biggest thing is in that predictability is that you, like I said, everybody's really busy in what they have going on, but it's it's like bowling with rails on, right? With the bumpers. And so at the end of the day, summer's the bumpers, but everyone's rolling the ball at a different speed, at a different curve, all that other stuff. We just want to knock down some pins. We're not going to knock down 10 every single time, but we want to make sure and knock down as many pins as possible. So though our facilitation process and the rosebud thorn and the spotlight and education and accountability, all the things that go into your experience are the rails. We want to keep that pliable. We've got a couple non-negotiables in there with the accountability and the rosebud thorn, but we wanted to make sure that you use your time so that you continually have a great experience. You have a voice in what your experience is going to be, but again, we put rails on it.
And I think one of the things that you've done very wisely, and you've been fanatical about the client experience is, and the customer peer experience is, I think I had, mostly on this podcast, we have the owners of their companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about, let's say let's say you're building a home, you have a window rep.
Mm-hmm.
Your representative really represents that company. For the most of the people, whoever your rep is, your salesperson is who the company is. And so it's the sooner management understands that their client experience, that their brand awareness, that for all practical purposes, the client salesperson is the owner of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's such opportunity when a salesperson leaves, right? Unless you have a direct relationship to a general manager or the owner of the company. Where I'm going with this is like Summer, for instance, represents C9
Mm-hmm.
and like the other facilitators that I don't
Mm-hmm.
know either. And so making sure that they are connecting with their people reflects on you
Yep.
more than probably any other thing. And so making sure that they're sort of your superstar rock stars, which they are, just again only reaffirms. And I think if I'm relating to this to building, if you're a builder that has a project manager,
Mm-hmm.
they for all if they're, let's say you're a bigger scaled company where the owner maybe isn't as involved,
Mm-hmm.
that project manager for all practical purposes is the owner of whatever company it is.
And if you don't self-perform, and let's say you're a builder that you sub everything out, I bet the high performing builders have a really, really tight group of subs that they work with, because those subs are representing the brand. They show up on site. So if the owner comes walking through, it's like, hey, who the hell is this guy? And why does he smell like cigarette smoke? Why is he smoking in my new house that isn't even built yet? That kind of stuff. That feels very different for someone than someone that walks into a house and people are dressed nice. It almost feels like a white glove experience. So you take that and you correlate it to what I do with our community, our team. We invest into training. We do team summits quarterly. Some of them are educational. Some of them are just relationship building. We do best practice sharing, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing is that they've got it in their heart and they're good representatives of the community. They bring skill sets to the table and they use our tools to make the experience second to none.
This episode is brought to you by Adaptive, the software for builders that automates draws, budgets, and bookkeeping with AI. For over a year now, I've been partnered with Adaptive, and they've just been an amazing game changer in terms of efficiency in our time and all our bookkeeping. From the time we get an invoice, we import it into their system. The AI codes it, cost codes it, job codes it. All we have to do is review it, pass it through the people internally in the office, all digitally, and then it gets approved and paid all via ACH. It's becoming extremely fast and saving us countless hours a day and a week. When it comes to draws, all of our budgets now are set in Adaptive as well. So now when we cost code against the draws, we can do our change orders, and then with a click of a button, we can submit these draws to our title companies or to our homeowners for faster payment. If you're looking to save time, and if you're looking to be accurate, I highly recommend Adaptive. Additionally, if you'd like to listen to one of their founders share the story of Adaptive, you can listen to episode number 15 on the Curious Builder podcast. This episode is brought to you by Helmuth & Johnson, a top Minnesota law firm ranging from individuals to emerging startups to multinational Fortune 500 companies. Focusing on transactional law, litigation, and appeals, Helmuth & Johnson attorneys are leaders in their field. David Helmuth and Chad Johnson joined forces 30 years ago in 1994 with the goal of creating a premier law firm capable of handling complex and challenging cases efficiently and effectively. Today, Helmuth & Johnson rank among the top 15 largest law firms in Minnesota with more than 70 Twin City lawyers serving clients in more than 30 legal practice areas. They offer a full suite of legal services to clients without sacrificing their original commitment to providing responsive and affordable legal representation. To learn more, go to their website, www.hjlawfirm.com. What is, you already kind of mentioned how it's evolving year to year. What do you think is next? I think I asked you this question a month or two ago when we were chatting about potentially franchising. And I mean, to me, it's so successful. I'd like to compare and contrast a little bit to other peer groups out there. and I think I already know the answer a little bit to my question is transactional. I get hit up all the time for, the let's have coffee things, and it's fine. And like, you see on LinkedIn, open to networking, and I'm not dissing that at
Yeah, right.
all, but it's so hard to create some space. And so I think that, to me personally, the reason I'm a part of this, because like if I'm going to you're right, the barrier to entry is time,
Yep.
not money.
Totally.
And so it's like, I like the idea that I've committed to this, and now that time is reserved on my calendar. And, I think about it maybe the day beforehand. I'm like, oh, I got to meet tomorrow. I've
Yep.
made this commitment. I'm not canceling it. I'm going. And so it's like, I think owners, when we have things on our calendar, we tend to follow through on them,
Yep.
or at least like for myself, where it's hard to just be like randomly, hey, let's do this, let's
Yep.
do that. Can you speak a little bit to why that's been successful for C9, and what, as you look out in the space, whether it's in Minneapolis or abroad in the country, what do you think other peer groups or the networking groups are not doing, or basically, like, what does the field look like?
It's saturated. I mean, it seems like everybody and their brother
That's kind of my,
is
yeah.
getting into it, right? And there's some that have been around for a while. Locally Allied Executives is a good local group. Vistage is national based, private equity backed. To me, I really don't want to grow this outside the Midwest. So I did a bunch of visioning work and some strategic exercises last year, and I came to terms with the fact that I want to keep this Twin Cities centric, but also maybe have some arms. So like hub and spoke type. And so I like secondary markets. I like Sioux Falls. I like Fargo. I like Des Moines. I like Green Bay, Appleton. I like Madison, stuff like that. I don't want to touch Chicago. I don't want to touch where some of these other places go. Could we do it? Yeah. Does that align with the life I want to live? No, I'm good. Like I love walking in. I was at the lobby right over here, your coffee shop,
Yeah.
2 days ago, and I ran into one of our members, and I know who that person is. I haven't seen that person in 9 months. My brain works in a weird way to where I see somebody and know their name. And so I love having that. So in that visioning work and in that strategic work, I came to the fact that I want to get us to 450. So we have 232 or something like that now. By 2030, I want to have 450 members. That equates to about 50 groups or so. To me, that feels really good, to where I still feel like I can have a good handle on what we have going on here. We've built the whole business on technology. So to me, it's super scalable for us to do it from an infrastructure standpoint. That's easy. But I want to make sure that if you're going somewhere, not everybody and their brother is a C9er. And again, it just goes down to that exclusivity and making sure that we've got a really captive group of human beings that are positively contributing to our community, the C9 community. That has another positive effect on the greater business ecosystem, and also has a positive effect on society. And so if we can keep moving in that right direction and riding this momentum, I'm good.
And I think that's a beautiful thing, of just kind of like, as you look to expand it, you pull it back because it aligns with your core values, which
Yep.
is why you even started the Coalition 9 in the first place. What is it? Um, the level of involvement, and what do you see? And I'm, maybe it's the 80-20 rule. Like, if I was to rate people into three categories within the C9ers, obviously they're all passionate. They're all, successful, most likely in their spaces to begin with, because they're investing in their education. They're investing in themselves by being a part of this, is a big part of it. But how many of them are cross-laterally constantly seeking out other C9ers, if you will? How many of them are pretty much content to stay within their groups and kind of stay involved? And maybe if people ask them outside, they'll certainly meet. And then what percentage of the people are, man, I'm doing everything I can to stay committed to my 9. I really want to be there for them. I just don't have the space in my life right now, unless I'm pulled out by one or two other members to really go out. And I'm speaking a little bit to the Spark events that you have, these 20 events. It's a lot of events. Kind of a big question, but
yeah. So we manage our events. So events are the best way for people to meet and see each other and things like that. So the 20, we kind of broke those into two different segments. So we do 8 Spark events. Those are bigger events. They're more highly attended, 100 to 150 people, educational topics. Sometimes it's just flat out relationship building. Like last week we did a thing at Forgotten Star where it was a bags tournament and happy hour type stuff. So that's kind of fun. And then we've done things. We did a panel discussion on AI technology and how it applies to your business. We're doing an event in May on business operating systems like EOS and Pinnacle and scaling up. So we're doing things like that will bring the large group of people together. And then we do a monthly wellness series on the second Tuesday of every month. I partnered with Alchemy 365, the owner of that, Mike Jones. So he leads that. And we're tackling topics that are for entrepreneurs and leaders to be able to tap into holistic wellness type of topics. And we're doing things that people aren't, frankly, we're trying to do things that people are too chicken shit to talk about.
Right.
And so we're doing things on Ayurveda, which is the Indian practice of wellness. We did a sauna cold plunge event over at Sisu here the other day, which was fantastic. Next month is meditation for high performers. We're bringing in a sleep doctor from the University of Minnesota, nutrition, like all of those things, but it's all wellness focused, but it's for high performers. So that to me is where, to answer your question of like the three buckets, I would say the majority of people, and let's call it 70% of the members, that's how they're going to use that extra relationship building time outside of their group. Mm-hmm. Then you've probably got 10% of the people that are just like, I can barely keep my head above water. They don't go to hardly any events. It's really pushed to get there to their group. They probably are a couple times a year making a sacrifice to skip the group because of some fire that happened in their business. So they're still kind of working in the business and stuff like that. And then you've got this 20% of people that are, they're super intense in their group. They love to go to all the events. They're just like, it is all C9 all the time. Would I love that number to go up? Yeah. You look at that 20% of people, I bet you I could name those 20% of people. And those are also the people that do an amazing job of inviting their friends to introduce them to me, to explore this. So that is kind of the 80-20 rule a little bit. And I'm a huge believer in that theory.
Speaking of numbers, tell us a little bit, let's go down the rabbit hole of 9. And you can take this as far as you want. I've heard you talk a little bit about it, but I just think it's really powerful. Maybe I'll just give my brief intro on it, and then I'll give you the space. But I mean, I know that 9 is a squad member number for the military.
Yep.
And so I think in general principles, the group is big enough so that it can get some, energy, no matter who's in the group energy wise. It's big enough that you're going to get enough people to make it move. It's small enough that everyone can have a voice. That's really my thought process of 9. I know you got way more into it than that. You could go
forever, right? So okay. Like I've read I'm a fan of Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was obsessed with 369. I'm obsessed with 369. So the power of threes is there's magic in all of that. Numerology, the number 9 is hope and prosperity. So that helped inform some of that. If I'm being super, super, super transparent on this, there's 2 things. I fell in love with the word coalition. Coalition means a faction of people from different backgrounds coming together for a common cause. And I was like, ooh, that's good. Like that is what we are. And so when we were doing the naming exercise and stuff like that I fell in love with that word. And we were doing all of these different things with the word coalition. And I was doing the research on the number 9. I came to the understanding that I wanted the groups to be somewhere in that 9 to 11 range. I just didn't know what that looked and felt like. And so I was doing the work on that and I fell in love with 9, but those 2 were mutually exclusive. So just like a lot of other ideas, I don't know if you subscribe to this mindset, but my wife and I, we sat down and we cracked open a bottle of red wine and we started going to work and we were throwing all these different things together. We opened up our second bottle of wine. And
you're like, wine rhymes with 9. Let's go there.
Right. Oh God. And so, we had a good buzz going and stuff like that. And my wife, I'll give her 100% credit on it. She was the one that just said, what about Coalition 9? Like, and I will say, like, the name hit me. Like, it felt really good. I needed to sleep on it for 24 hours, but a big part of the reason was it just sounds cool. It sounds way better than Coalition 8 or Coalition 10. So I landed on that and I fell in love with it.
Yeah. Well, and then it's kind of like manifest destiny, right? You find out the reason, and then you sort of justify the backfill it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you could look at a number of different things like 7, if you're a Christian, 7 is sort of the heavenly number.
Yeah,
and
right.
There's a lot of correlations with 7 and different things, but regardless if it's 7 to 11, it's 9 is the perfect number according to Aaron. Yeah. And, but it's funny. So you and I sat down, so maybe I'll so I launched the Curious Builder Collective a week ago that we're recording this. I think by the time this comes out, it will be about a month later. But you and I sat down and I kind of picked your brain. Like, I didn't want to replicate exactly what it is. But I have gotten so much value out of work being a C9er,
Mhm.
and those are cross industry. We have, all, I mean, I love the fact that there's only one other person even within the space of our group,
Yep.
within the construction field, which actually we're going to work together on some projects coming up, which is sort of fun.
Sweet.
But I wanted to create one for builders specifically
Yep.
because part of this has been my journey over the last couple of years, and I've talked a lot about it on this podcast. I mean, this podcast wouldn't exist without the contractor coalition.
Mhm.
There's your coalition
Yeah, there you
showing
go.
up, and so this education thing, I have been so slow to the table on networking. It's not until I got to the back 40 that I realized that, someone said recently that if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
And I think now that I understand that to a better degree, like, I'm not a loner anyway. I mean, I am in the terms of I'm a bit of counterculture and I want to do things in the sense that I want to do things differently than the status quo. That being said, nothing gives me more fulfillment than doing it with a lot of people that think like that. And so I have found so much value. I've kind of found my people,
Yeah.
and they're the people that want to share. They want to be authentic.
Yeah.
They want to talk about their failures because that's how we all learn from each other.
Yeah.
I had another builder that told me how they failed, and it allowed me to escape a very difficult situation that I would have entered had I not heard his story.
Mhm.
And that's what I want this podcast to be. And that's what I want this networking group to be. And so I've patterned some of the ideas. I actually haven't told you all of it. I think I sent you the link before.
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
But really what it is what I wanted to do was to have a form like yours,
Yep.
not quite the rosebud thorn, but I wanted it to have a structure because, again, if you just invite people to show up, I didn't realize what I was doing, but I didn't want networking.
Yeah.
I wanted learning.
Yeah.
I wanted energy. I want to build and part of it was structuring the price. So I think it's $1,200 for 4 events. So I'm going to do it quarterly. To me, I just didn't have the space to do it monthly, and it's a big pull because I have a couple other jobs.
And we talked about that. I thought that was really smart. I think that there's not enough people like you that are doing this in their specific industries, right? I've been approached by people that are in the service industry of like, hey, I want to do this. What do you think? I'm like, go for it. Like, I think every business owner, and we'll talk about your members and your listeners, is that they should have 4 things that they are invested in from a time standpoint and resource standpoint. They should have something like a Coalition 9 that's industry agnostic, that they're pressure testing ideas. There might be a CPA in the group, there might be an attorney in the group, there might be a banker in the group, but you might have a manufacturing, whatever, something like that, to where you're getting outside voices. I do think there's a ton of power in what you've built in making sure that you're speaking the same language, your best practice sharing, you're pressure testing ideas with a group of people that you trust. There's a safe space that you can talk about that, knowing you may brush up against some other people, but at the end of the day, like, there's enough business to go around. So let's just, kind of an all ships rise mindset. A coach. So I think a one-on-one coach is really, really powerful. You're not going to be able to get into the depths of things in a half-day session. You might build relationships one-off with somebody in your groups that you're in, that you can get some depth to it. But when you put a little bit of skin in the game with a coach, there's some power in that. And then some type of operating system. So whether it be an EOS, entrepreneurial operating system, Pinnacle, scaling up, something like that is going to create dashboards and share vision and get you laser focused. You're diving in on that aspect of what needs to be done for your industry. And I just think you got a great audience of people that are getting it, and the momentum will happen.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I mean, that was really important to me. I had, we have 4 set topics. They're on our website. You can check it out at the Curious Builder Podcast.com under events. In the collective, I like double alliteration if I can get it. So Curious Collective, those kinds of things are just, I don't know why. But anyway, the point was, the groups of 9. So I borrowed that from you.
Cool.
We did a beta test, and I think there was 30 people that showed up. And anytime you get that many people showing up, you're like, okay, there's a ton of energy. 30 people on 3 weeks notice right after the holidays. I was blown away. And so I'm like, okay, I want to build a community. I was also really pleasantly surprised because I do know a lot of people, having been in the business for 20 years now. Most of them were people I did not know, which I took as like, I was really excited. And I think you don't have to be the master of something to also be a teacher. I just want to create a safe space, but a space where people can just test ideas,
Yep.
kind of just be open about what they're doing. Well, I'm continuing to evolve what I believe and what I know as well, right? And I think you get, I've talked about it before, but you kind of get into this not imposter syndrome. What's the word? Well, basically, you don't think like you have enough to share, so you don't share anything. We
Right.
all have a lot to share,
Yeah.
and none of us are really. I think the most inquisitive, curious, intelligent people are constantly reinventing themselves.
Yep.
I know a guy who's 75 years old, and he's the most interesting person I've ever met in my life. He'd be an expert on anything he talks about, and he's constantly still learning.
Well, it's the name of your podcast. It's curiosity.
Mhm.
Like, I think some of the best entrepreneurs, the best business owners are just curious. And the people that I know, the closed mindset that people bring, that if you've ever heard the term, if you're the smartest person in the room, find a new room, it's a bunch of shit. Like, then like, you're not opening your mind enough. You're not taking people, you're not diving in, you're not asking questions. Everyone's got a story, everyone's got a journey. You're going to be able to learn something. If you're a 74-year-old, like, that guy's got it figured out because he spent his whole life in curiosity mode, and he continues to pull things from different generations, from different industries, things like that.
I just sat down with him. I actually built him a home as well. He has a 400-person mental health business, and he's just an incredible person. And he said, if you're thinking about retirement all the time, because he said, I have my two least favorite words are the N word and the R word. I'm not going to say the N word on air. I think we all know what that one is.
Yeah.
But the R word is retired. And his comment was,
Yep.
he goes, if you are constantly thinking about retirement, perhaps you chose the wrong profession.
Yep.
And for him, he's super passionate. He doesn't ever see him stop because he goes, I love what I do.
Yeah.
And I just think that speaks to passion. I think if I was to, I have 3 young kids, and I was talking to someone recently about, like, what would you encourage your kids to do? And I'm very thankful that I have parents that were like this as well. And so I can model it a little bit. I just want my kids, whatever they're passionate about, that's what I want to support. Because if you're passionate about it, like, you'll find your way.
And I think passion, as you get older, and you're back 40, and in his case, 74, I think passion turns into purpose. And it's the people that don't align the rest of their life or their post-career life or whatever that is to a purpose. Like, some of the most vibrant people that I've ever met that are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s are still doing stuff. Like, they're enough of their dirty little mitts into something that just keeps them vital. And it allows them to think about something new, allows them to be around other vibrant thinkers, to just tap into that all of that stuff. But if you retire, and I saw this firsthand with my father, and it got to a point to where he just wanted to retire, and all he wanted to do is just sit up at the cabin and do nothing. And I just feel like it's just not my identity. And I just see people deteriorate mentally and physically. So whatever it is, it could be like coaching baseball. It could be giving back to the Boys and Girls Club. It could be sitting on a board. It doesn't matter, but I think there's got to be something there.
Well, I think I'd heard recently, and something I was listening to, there's 3 phases of a life, a career, whatever you want to call it. And it was the learn, earn, and return. And that really resonated with me. And it's funny because I think I skipped the earning phase. I got to go back and do the earning phase because I seem to have missed that part. But I think what some of these these relationship building groups that I'm trying to be a part of with the coalition and just in general, the podcast, is I'm learning as much from you when you're talking, but I love getting a space where you empower people to either learn from what we're sharing from each other or from the group as whole. And I used to coach cross-country high school running for 10 years before I had kids, and I sort of had to choose either 40 random kids or my own kids. I couldn't do it all and have a business. But my point is, I think if I wasn't a builder, I would have been an educator. And I love teaching. And again, I don't feel like I have that much to teach, but I think I really like seeing the eyes, especially of children, and like when they grasp a concept, and there's something very empowering about that, fulfilling for me. And I'm still exploring my way, trying to figure out what that is. And I feel like for this Curious Collective, nothing would make me happier than for these builders to come together these 4 times a year, and then for that group to sort of really set in. And I'm toying around with, do I cap the limit on the number? Because right now, the way it's set up, we're still just kind of testing the waters. And if we get 20 to 30, great. If we get 15, I'm fine with that too.
Mhm.
You know, we also am balancing sponsors and some
Mhm.
responsibilities there
Mhm.
too,
Mhm.
right? But at the end of the day, I want those people to be super passionate about what they're doing. I don't want them to. Nothing would make me happier than for them to do things and work with each other outside of that group,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like for it to kind of take on its own life.
Yeah.
And so we'll just kind of see. We'll see how it evolves.
And I think the thing that you'll experience that I experienced and I understood really early was it's not about me. Doesn't matter what I want. Doesn't matter if I want them to stay with me for a long time or if they want to peel off after a year or whatever. It's what our members want. And so for me, surveying, like always getting feedback, but then taking action on that feedback was in our early stages. Like we had a beta test group before we even launched. We had a soft launch that added more members. And then those people were giving
Pulling
us
people
feedback.
in, yeah.
And then that's how we're evolving our process and all that other stuff. Like for me, it was always iterating. We look very different now than we did 5 years ago. And that's by design. And in 1 year from today, your experience is going to be a little bit different. And in 5 years from today, everybody's experience is going to be very different than it was in 2024.
There was we'll have to talk about this maybe offline. We'll have to institute some sort of competition within the groups, because imagine what that would do. That would be super interesting. Who knows what that would even look like. Anyway, back to reality, I guess, for me is you had mentioned you invested a ton of, in technology. What does that mean exactly? I mean, you're showing up in person. Obviously, I love your app. I mean, for those that are not C9 or that are listening to this, I mean, the moment the clock hits noon, you walk out, you get a text message, and it's, it's 2 questions. It's rate your session on a scale from 1 to 10 or 1 to 5.
1 to 5, yep.
1 to 5. And then is there any comments you have? And that's it.
Yep, that's it.
And I would suspect that 90% of people just rate it and then don't comment. How often do you get actual comments out of it?
Not enough.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean,
in the groups that I get 0 feedback on, give me the heebie-jeebies. Like I'm like, okay, no feedback is not good.
Right. Tell you what, I will be better at giving feedback.
I would love that,
because part of it is I'm just like, you just spent the typical entrepreneur. Like I look down, I have 20 missed phone calls and whatever. I'm like, boom, I'm back into work mode.
Yep.
I think the timing of it is still great because it's still fresh.
Yeah.
Where the reason I bring it up is I have tried in that beta test, and this is a class. You're gonna love how dumb an idea this was. I tried to incentivize people. I can't remember if I gave them $100 or what. I know what I did is I had a videographer there and a photographer there, and I said, I'm going to give you all the digital assets from it so you can post and do whatever you want. I mean, I paid that person, let's say $500 for the 2 hours they were there or whatever it was. Yeah. And I think 5 people responded, which is like 5 out of 30 isn't terrible, I guess. Right. But I had like 15 questions because because I was using them. It was free for one thing.
Yeah.
I really wanted to know like what time of day, what kind of cost. I mean, I was really using them as the beta test. What I wanted more information so that I knew how to form it around them, but they weren't giving it. So my new idea is we're actually making templated cards with they're going to have 2 of them. One they get to keep and one they have to hand in or they can't leave the room. And rather than AI, because I'm not going to develop technology this quick, it's just going to be a hard stock with my logo and whatnot on it. 5 questions. You have to write down 5 things you learned and then give it to me. And then as they leave the room, they have to hand it to one of my marketing team members. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll see if we get a restraining order. If we have to hold them in the room, you can't leave. But anyway, we'll see if that works better. We'll see if that works better in the moment than trying to email them after, because that usually doesn't work.
5 might be too many.
Really?
Yeah. Power 3s.
All right, 3s. 3 it is.
3. If you get 3 things from every single person, that's solid gold, brother. Yeah. Like I would love
3 times 30. That's a lot.
That's a lot. And you're going to get a lot of repeats, and that's just going to reinforce the things that you need to double down on. You're going to get a lot of repeats on the things you need to change. And then you get one-offs that are just like, okay, that's a one-off thing. I'll just shove that in my back pocket and we'll see what happens. But the feedback loop is really important. And for me to want to automate that, again, that predictability of, okay, so after my session is done, and we're even working on that too, to where maybe we need to send that text a little bit earlier. So we need to, instead, if your group is peeling off at noon, maybe we need to send that at 11:45.
Or maybe send it at 11:45. And the facilitator says, before you leave, everyone, because we already do the initiatives right when we leave. And that would work.
So we're talking about all that, right? Like we're doing that in real time. So for us, those are just tweaks because we've built the technology stack so deep so that we just really want to, my biggest thing was just automation. And the more automation you can have, the less bodies that you have touching things, the less overhead that you create, having to run a healthy like community that is an unrivaled member experience. To me, that was always the thing, is how can we leverage technology so that we don't feel like we're nickel and diming our members?
How many, I think I know the answer to this, but how many employees do you actually have in Coalition 9?
W-2 or 1099?
1099.
23.
W-2.
0. 1. Me.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought.
And that's by design.
Yep.
So there was two things that I wanted to do when I launched my next business, whatever that was 0 W-2 employees besides me, and a recurring revenue model. And so something that was going to create a predictable experience, predictable budgeting. You go back to my 29-year-old self when I was sitting around trying to figure out what the hell a P&L was. Well, now I'm very financially adept. I've spent the time in the last 20 years really getting into that side of things. Well, how can we make sure that this is something that people don't feel nickel and dimed? We've created a space where organizations want to be a part of it. So partners like Verseek and United Healthcare and stuff like that, they're community supporters of ours. They financially support us. How can we then funnel all those dollars back into the community to make sure that we're creating a second to none experience? We're putting on awesome events. And then kind of going to what you asked a little bit earlier, and I'll kind of double down on that a little bit, is I always wanted to have a philanthropic arm of this. So our big thing for 2024 is that we are, and I don't think I've talked about this on even my podcast or any podcast. So whenever this comes out, I think it's going to fall in time. So we're launching it in April, is the C9 Gives Foundation. And so it is a 501c3. I am going to be taking and funneling a percentage of our membership revenue into the foundation every single year. And then we have a 5-person board. We're able to then take the financial resources of not only Coalition 9, but any member that wants to donate to this, or corporate organizations that want to donate to this, and then be able to take all of the time, talent, and treasure that we have in our community and do things for the greater community. And so that might be, you have a small business owner that is having a hard time making ends meet. Maybe we have a CPA in the community that will say, I'll file your tax returns. I'll do a pro bono through the C9 Gives Foundation.
I like that.
So it allows us we have so many crazy.
So you use all the
people.
skills in the way of giving. I mean, there's 3 things. There's, your talent.
Yep.
There's money.
Yep.
And then there's time.
Yep.
And I mean, and the C9 could do all 3 of them. One of them doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of people that I meet that they just don't have an organization that they feel like they really align with. Like myself, I've never really felt like, like a lot of organizations will ask for money. I don't have anything that I connect with them on. So to me, this was it's a little selfish too, is like, okay, this is a great way for me to not only through the business be able to funnel dollars for a greater good, but personally I can do it as well.
But this goes back to your back 40 legacy principle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this goes back to your core reason you started Coalition 9, which is to have something that really fulfilled you and passionately drove you on the back 40.
Mm-hmm.
This is just another one of those things, and doing incredible good within the community on a number of levels. I look at, we've had Mark Ostrom on before. He has the Joy Collaborative, and it's so incredible what he does. And listen to his podcast if you haven't listened to it. It's very inspiring. But he and I are actually going to collaborate and I'm going to do a live event with him with Curious Builder.
Sweet.
And we're going to do all the proceeds are going to go to the Joy Collaborative Foundation. And we're still trying to figure all that out.
Yep.
But I think when you can make it tangible, locally sometimes. I mean, I recently had actually 2 episodes ago, I had Sven Gustafsson on from Stonewood. He has the one called the 1 for 1 Project. And for every home that they build 1 home in Guatemala. Sweet. And, these things, I think sometimes, at least for myself, not having any sort of corporate background or anything like that, it's like, it's hard to know sometimes how to give, because you're not exposed to it when you're sometimes as an entrepreneur. You haven't been. And so it's like, you see stuff in the paper and you're like, man, how do I give? And when people in like face to face, or when there's some sort of real connection point, both locally in Minnesota, there's plenty of I'm not saying anything against, giving abroad, or there's a great need for that. Absolutely. And I applaud everyone that does that, but there are plenty of needs even within our state for a variety of reasons. One is entrepreneurial, like you're talking about, but like Mark, for instance, he's helping, there's 66,000 disabled children in Minnesota that need help. And I'm like, oh man, I got, I have 3 kids. You don't have to have kids to feel just kind of like this hit in your heart. And I raised my hand. I was like, Mark, I sort of want to quit my job and just come work for
Right.
you. And he's like, I'd gladly hire you.
Yeah,
Well, I can't hire you.
you
You
know.
just got to give me your time.
Yeah,
Like,
right,
"Well, I
right.
can't do that either." Anyway, I just think, I feel like we are in kind of this cool golden age of
Mhm.
businesses being, you mentioned this before, being more vulnerable,
Mhm.
being more open and authentic with the struggles of life, mental health. I love the wellness deal. I'm gonna have to go
Mhm.
check
Mhm.
that out. I know I'm probably in the last 10% of your C9ers,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
fact that I'm so overwhelmed with all the things that I do have going on, it's hard for me to, again, with the kids my age they are, I always feel a bit of a hypocrite. Like, I do host a couple events a year
Mhm.
that are in the evenings, but I rarely get out in any evening thing,
Mhm.
just because that's really the time that I'm
Totally.
prioritizing with
Yeah.
my family at this point in life.
Yeah.
And I'm fine doing that, but it doesn't make the yes side of me feels like I want to do these other things.
And I
But
get that. Like, even me, so I don't have kids. My wife and I chose not to have kids, but I protect that evening time with my wife. She's an entrepreneur too. We're two ships passing in the night during the week. So we've really only got a couple hours to
when
connect.
that's your downtime, it's
All of
all the other
that,
space up
right?
here too.
But you think of all of our members, like, so if we do an afternoon event and or evening event, we'll do it from like 3:30 to 6.
Love it.
So the people like yourself that are like, I got to get home by 4:30, right? Just because I got family stuff that I want to participate in, stuff like that. So you can come for a little bit, do your thing, and hit the road. And some people, they'll stay the whole time. But we want to create that space. We really try and stay within that 8 to 5 time.
And it's funny you say that, because that really, and granted, the Curious Builder Collective is more work related, and mine's in the morning, like the coalition, right? Mine is 8:30 to 11,
Yeah.
on Fridays, 4 times a year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's like people can kind of work that into their schedule, and it seems like, I guess maybe a last question here, as we kind of, well, do a little personal questions here at the end. But one of the questions I had for you is, as you've already mentioned, I feel like there are so many groups out there, from Builder 20s to Rotary clubs to YPOs to all these things that don't even, every industry has 10 different quote networking groups, and I like the relationship ones much better. Do you think that has exploded post COVID, more so, or has it always been there? I'm just not aware of it. My thinking along those lines, that for 2 years the world was sort of shut in, and now there's this. I feel like people are really excited to go back to events and really excited to get out in the public space. Or am I misreading the market? What's
No,
your
I think you're
perspective
right.
on
I think
that?
you're right on. I think it's a mix of a whole bunch of things. Like, I really will say, like, I don't think we would have had our explosive growth that we did in 2020, 21, and 2022, which is really our, like, wow, like our rocket ship years, without COVID. Social isolation had such an effect on people. We launched in 2019. We thrived in 2020 because we had a great technology stack. We created a great immersive experience from an arm's length from a technology standpoint. We were really fast to come out of COVID. So we took some chances based on the people that we had involved. So all of that kind of matters. I just think, dude, we can do a whole podcast on the effects, psychological effects of COVID. I think that people have the psychological need for connection, and COVID just threw fire on it, or threw gas on that fire. Like, it just took off. So yeah, I have seen things pop up. There's more women's groups, there's more people of color groups, there's more groups. And I love that.
So
Like,
do I.
we've like you doing your thing specifically for builders, like that is very niche. That is right on. There should be more niche related groups. I say that also too because we are a non-niche related group. Like, we're just
Well,
a
you
good
already
people
mentioned
group.
you have one that's industry agnostic and one
I
that's
think
industry specific.
I,
So you have two.
I tell people all the time, you should be in two groups. You should be in one where you're with people that you're all speaking the same language, whatever that is, whatever that community looks like. That could be a community of faith. Like, maybe you need to double down on your community of faith. All of those things kind of coexist with each other. Multiple communities should cross-pollinate.
Mhm. I think just the ideas, right? How many times do you hear someone that's, right now I'm really fascinated by the client experience. And I was talking to someone this morning, actually, and one of their good friends is a world renowned chef.
Mm.
And I'm putting on this event. We haven't announced it yet. I guess I'm sort of teasing it. And it'll be in the 14th of November.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to celebrate people that make things with their hands.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about specifically for things that go into the home.
Mm-hmm.
But then it got me thinking, A chef makes things by hands.
Yep.
A chef is very, probably more so than anyone in the building community, is very obsessed with client experience. You
Yep.
think about the restaurants, from the way it feels to the lighting to, the way the food is served, though, obviously the way it tastes, the menu. So I actually think it'd be kind of fun to throw this curveball in.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to ask the celebrity chef if they want to sit on this panel and talk about client experience.
Love it.
I just think it'd be fascinating. And if they say no, I'll find someone that'll say yes.
Well, there's a lot to learn doing what you're doing with your builders group, from the hospitality industry.
Oh,
Like the hospitality industry is like, if you don't crush it every single time, you're done.
right.
You're done.
So I have a question for you. So I I was talking to a designer yesterday. I interviewed this designer, and she had some front house staff that went to another designer, and she just kind of rolled her eyes, and she's like, the designers, it takes a year to really get them up to speed, and then they may go to a different design firm. But you look around town, there's a lot of very talented designers, and it's very normal that the design, talent will kind of travel from within the designers. And with builders, it's project managers. You'll see project managers kind of go through different builders, right? It's kind of just like, I don't know what you want to call it, this merry-go-round. Man, I totally lost my train of thought on that. Going around and around. Oh, how do you break that cycle? Hospitality. So my sister-in-law is a dynamite. She's been in the food industry for 10 years. She actually went to school to be a potter. She's an expert. I didn't, sometimes people surprise you. She's not what I would think of as a salesperson. She's the number one salesperson in our company for the last 3 years. And so it's her perfection streak, her OCD streak, but it's her hospitality years of working in the food industry that has really led her client. I'm guaranteed that's why. There's a part of me, she doesn't know anything about construction, but there's a part of me that wants to bring her in and have her be a project manager, because the client's experience, she would dominate it. And I only bring that up. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to do it because A, it's family, and two, it's a different way of looking at it. So I'd love your thought on this. And then I guess I'll temper this with a story that I've told a couple of times about a plumber down in Florida. And I heard that he couldn't find project managers or plumbers they had like 1-star ratings. And he's like, I can't do this anymore. So he went to all the high-end restaurants and he hired all the maitre d's, trained them how to be plumbers, and he just blew it out of the water. Anyway, with that kind of informative mind, what do you think? How specific do you think you would have to know knowledge? I know might be a controversial idea, but the idea is, if I'm focusing really on client experience, couldn't you teach them the skills? Or am I undervaluing the skills and the knowledge you do need to know? Because you can't build a home without knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, well, that's on you to make that investment into that individual. But if you take and kind of throw in a little pot here, passion, attitude, effort, desire, and mix it all up, like, you can really train a lot of the things that need to be done. And those experience trains a lot. So, I mean, I even look at, you go back to the sales side of things, like, she crushes it in sales for 3 years, non-salesperson. I know organizations that have built structure to where if they're going to meet with a client, you bring the sales rep, but you bring someone that is not a sales rep. And you bring the VP of ops, you bring the CFO, you bring somebody with you that can speak a little bit of the same language, but they don't feel imposing as being a salesperson or whatever. There's magic in that. Like, it all comes down to just people buying from people, or people wanting to cater to people, or people feeling one way or another. Hospitality industry, the good hospitality related organizations crush it. They do such a good job.
Interesting.
Yes.
Well, we are definitely over time. I want to respect your time. Maybe one a favorite book, or what do you do to self-educate? I'm guessing you're a podcast guy, but I know you probably are randomly getting input from all the people in your C9 groups. How are you learning? How are you educating yourself?
So, talking to guys like you, talking to other people, I'm a better communicator than I am. I dropped out of college, so it's clear that I'm not the best at educating myself, but I'm not a good reader, but I'm a good absorber of information. So podcasts, I listen to a book a week. So I try and do 52 books a year. Some of them are business I don't like business books. I like more human behavior books.
So like memoirs, biographies, or what do you mean by?
Sometimes like, I'll just shoot you straight. Like, I just got done with so last month was, at the end of last month, I finished up Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. Great book. I'm going to give myself a couple weeks here to get through I'm re-listening to, after 10 years, the first Harry Potter book. So there's things in that make my brain, one, it makes me feel really good, right? It kind of brings me back.
Yeah.
But then two is that it's mindless. But I'm still kind of listening to something. I come up with ideas in that space. So I think giving yourself a little bit of grace, to where I think people feel like, okay, I gotta keep up with everybody else that's reading so much and all that other stuff. Bullshit. Like, I think you just do you.
Yep, I agree. It's funny you say that, because I'll bounce usually between Mondays through Wednesdays. I'll do all my podcasts.
Yeah.
And then Thursdays through Sunday, it'll be podcasts, or sorry, Audible book tapes.
Yeah.
And so I usually will go through, like a sci-fi or a fantasy novel. Again, a little bit more mindless, more creativity. It's kind of just different. It's out there.
Yeah.
Magic swords and dragons and whatever, Harry Potter. Plus now my kids are little, so it's going to be fun to reread those real shortly. But then also I've been really into memoirs and biographies.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I really
documentaries.
And
my wife and I watch a ton of documentaries.
Yep. This is really just, it's the learning thing, right?
Totally. Yep.
So,
lifelong learner.
Well, for those that want to find you, the best ways to reach out to you would be
coalition9.com. All of our stuff is on there, our events, everything like that. LinkedIn, Aaron Eggert. I'm not that great at the other socials. Not Facebook, definitely not Facebook. Yeah. So LinkedIn, Aaron at coalition9.com is my email.
Yeah. Perfect. We'll have everything in the show notes. Appreciate it. And thanks again for coming on. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it.
We're excited to announce that our first live event is now on sale on our website. On May 16th at 5 o'clock in the North House in Minneapolis, the Curious Builder is going to be hosting Brad Levitt, Nick Schiffer, Tyler Grace, and Morgan Molitor to a panel discussion about networking, marketing your brand and your business, and all things related to the Contractor Coalition, which is coming to Minneapolis on May 15th through May 19th. If you're looking at leveling up your business, I'd highly recommend attending. For those local here in Minnesota, it's right in your backyard. This would be an amazing time to network with some of the nation's best builders with the best building practices around. Join us for the Contractor Coalition, or if you just want to be there for one night and enjoy the networking and meet these superstars from around the country, again, that is going to be May 16th at 5 o'clock at the North House. Tickets can be bought at the contractorcoalitionsummit.com, as well as the curiousbuilderpodcast.com. The Curious Builder is proud to announce that on our website, we now have a shop or a merch page. If you want to support the show, it really makes a big difference. A lot of people over the years have asked, how can we support your show? We really appreciate the content. So head to the curiousbuilderpodcast.com, go to the shop page, and right now the shirts will be on sale for pre-order until May 1st. It's the only time we're going to do it. So if you want your limited edition shirt, head there now, and we appreciate the support. Thanks for listening to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like what you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It really means a lot. It's a great way for us to just understand what you like about the podcast and what we can keep doing. So like and review, and please share with your friends and family. Find out more at curiousbuilderpodcast.com.